Welcome to the Obesity Matters Wellness Workshop, where we embark on an incredible journey towards better health and wellness together. Whether this is your first time or you've been with us since the beginning, we are grateful you are here. My name is Rachel. I am the Vice Chair of Obesity Matters and your host for this year-long program. Today, I'm so excited to welcome back our very own Sandra Elia, Chair of Obesity Matters, and the amazing Dr. Sandy Van. I know them so well, and I know that separately they are amazing, but together they are magic. Thank you so much to both of you for being with us today to tackle a challenging situation, providing us tools and techniques to help us enjoy the holidays with health and happiness. Sandra and Sandy, can you tell us a little bit about yourselves before we dive into the content, and maybe why you're uniquely poised to tell us about today's topic, about the holiday? Over to you.
Do you want me to start? I'm going to start just because I've been here before, and I'm going to start by saying I am a huge fan of Dr. Sandy Van. You guys
I'm a huge fan of you too.
You guys are in such luck. You need to know, look at that, I love it, that there's only a handful of doctors like Dr. Sandy Van, who not only practice in the science of treatment of obesity, but she does it from a place of compassion and understanding, and she pours everything into her work. So I'm lucky to call her a colleague, fortunate to call her a friend, but I'm back. I'm a food addiction counselor. I think the holidays are they say it's the happiest time of the year, maybe. If you're one of those people that struggles with the holidays, and there's a variety of reasons why you may struggle with the holidays. I definitely have in the past. I'm getting better and better as I add to my toolkit. But maybe, in your childhood, the holidays weren't a happy time. And so that brings up memories. Maybe you've been influenced by the Hallmark Channel and Hollywood, that the holidays have to look a certain way. And then if they don't, that feels bad. And we want to dispel some of those myths. And sometimes not only is food triggering, the family can be triggering. And how do we deal with that? So that's what we're going to talk about today and unpack. But over to you, Sandy.
Hello. Thanks for the warm intro, Sandra and Rachel, and to Obesity Matters for hosting this wonderful webinar. I can't believe the turnout. When they told me how many people were showing up, I got a little bit nervous. Even though I present so regularly, I'm an obesity doctor. I'm a trained family physician. I've been practicing in obesity for 7+ years now. It's hard to say that. I can't believe it. But my primary objective with obesity management is really to help people start changing the narrative they have in their mind about their lived experience with weight, which is why I feel that Sandra and I collaborate so beautifully together. She is my best friend, but I've learned a lot spiritually from her and how to counsel patients around some of the cognitive behavioral aspects of weight management. Cognitive being, and I'll use that word a lot in this session, but it's just a fancy word for thinking. Like, how do we change the way you think so that you change how you feel and what you do? And so the other aspect of my practice is really medical management. So treating obesity as a medical condition by offering not only CBT, but medications and referrals to surgery. Food situations during the holidays. And this is when I was asked to do this on the Marilyn Dennis show. They always want to simplify it on television, right? They're like, well, come up with the top 5 or top 4 high risk settings in a holiday scenario. And so these were some of the things that we came up with. But first, I wanted to preface that by talking about why we might find ourselves consuming in excess over the holidays. Some of it might be really obvious to you, but when it comes to overeating behavior, we know that overeating behavior might be a result of conditioned experiences. If you think back to your earliest experience enjoying food, I know for me, I remember it really, really vividly, right? So I remember my aunt presenting to me a warm apple pie during the holidays as a dessert, even though I was already full. And so for me, the holidays will always represent cinnamon, apple, and pastry toast. So the sight and smell of it is always remembered. It feels really good. And we know that when we consume certain foods that are really tasty, ultra processed foods, that this can generate this cascade of events in our mind, or in our brain, sorry, not our mind, but our brain, where you get this release of something called opioids that make you feel warm and cozy and feel good. But then you also get this release of dopamine that makes you learn that time and place and smell and sight of food. So those then become the cues for you to suddenly want. Like I know for me, when I see a set table with all of these these plates and a fork and a knife, and like we never do that except for Christmas time, right? So when I see that, I'm anticipating pie. That is what I remember. And so we know that the things that can dial the craving up and down can also have to do with emotions. And this is why it's important for Sandra's part later to talk about how to manage, difficult relationships during the holidays, or to manage stressors during the holidays, because we know that that can dial up unintentional eating. And so the constant food availability during the holidays, we know, can be a cue for us. And your body, remember, is hardwired, your brain is hardwired to seek out calories effortlessly. So if food is available to you, you will consume it without great effort, right? So it's not really natural for us to restrain ourselves from eating food. It requires a lot of effort and attention. And that's where hypervigilance eventually, there's only so much hypervigilance you can make around food. That's where it becomes really difficult to diet over the holidays, because there's all this food around, but you're hardwired to actually seek out food for pleasure and for energy, right? So for those of us who feel like we sometimes lose control, don't feel bad. Your brain is doing what it's designed to do. And we're just trying to hijack its attention by building that resistance muscle. A lot about the distortions that come along with wanting to eat excessively. And so one of those distortions is called permission thinking. This is the story that kind of comes up before you're about to indulge. So the basic premise of CBT is really that your behavior is directly tied to how you think. So whatever you think, you will do. And so if you're thinking to yourself, man, it's a special occasion, of course I got to try this thing, or everyone else is eating it, so yeah, I should. So you will always believe, if you always believe whatever story you give yourself, you'll act based on that. And the idea of being able to recognize these stories, these permission thoughts, is to be able to change them, or to at least maintain some distance from them. The idea of CBT is to really develop more mindful awareness of these thinking distortions, and to actually keep distance, and to know that you don't necessarily have to act on everything you think, because you don't have to believe everything you think, right? So I've already screwed this up. What's another bad meal? This food only comes around once a year, so why not? And I don't want to disappoint my auntie for making me this gluten-free dessert that I didn't even ask for, right? So, but you have the power to choose how you respond to the permission thinking. And one way of doing that is to really ask yourself, how is this story going to end for me? If I eat this, am I actually going to really enjoy it? Will I regret it later? Or is it something that's actually worthwhile to me and I do want to enjoy it right now? So it'll be up to you to decide. Dinner, guys, like you're skipping your breakfast and lunch. This is something I hear from my patients all the time, that if they have like some sort of big event in the evening, they will budget their calories. So they won't eat breakfast, they won't eat lunch, or they might eat a little bit of a lunch. They might have a couple almonds before they go to the event, but they're saving all their calories for the big event. And they will exercise a ton to make sure that they're in that calorie deficit. But that usually backfires. You know why? Because I feel like that calorie budgeting trap makes for the best compelling permission thought. You've got room in your calories, girl. Go for it. Don't worry about it. And the worst part about that is that you actually show up to the event susceptible to overeating, because you are truly, really physiologically hungry. You are in a massive calorie deficit, so your brain is actually telling you to be hungry. And then on top of that, you're being exposed to all these food cues that are meant to tantalize your brain and to tantalize your palate. So my suggestion to patients, if they'll have me, is to really just eat normally throughout the day. To eat and act normally throughout the day. Sure, if you want to like modify your meals to be really health oriented to make up for some of the excess calories you might be consuming later, sure, modify it in that way, but don't, please don't show up anywhere ravenous. It just leads you to consume in a way that is not necessarily going to be the case if you show up with satisfaction and a plan on how to navigate the food available to you. So one of the tricks that I have when I go to a big dinner event is really making sure I have a protein-rich snack in advance. Not so much that it's going to make me full and not want to eat anything, but just enough so that I can have enough bandwidth to make decisions about food that I'm actually going to really enjoy. The buffet trap. Oh, my family is so good at the buffet. What we do is there's like maybe 20 of us, and we each bring something to that dinner meal. And what you find with a big Asian family is that there's always going to be somebody who makes a lasagna, who buys sushi. There's going to be Korean barbecue. There's going to be like a whole mishmash of things, of all the things that everybody loves to consume. And so that can easily lead one to overeat. So what I suggest is really just planning in advance what you kind of want to envision your plate to look like, and also envisioning how you want to leave, and sort of reverse engineering and thinking, okay, if I want to leave feeling like still comfortable enough to go on a walk around the block, then I'm probably going to modify the way that I eat in accordance to that, right? So I really just suggest like understanding sort of like healthy plate principles, not to say that you need to only be eating vegetables and protein, because who really wants to do that at the holidays, but to be like really selective about what you put on your plate, and to really only make room for the things you actually truly enjoy. And so with that being said, I always want to introduce to people the idea of living in the gray zone. We tend to think like in this dichotomous sort of way where we're either being really good with eating or we're being really bad with eating. What I have patients try to consider is, what is it that I value about the holidays? And what is it that I value also about my like day-to-day health and how I feel? And how do I find this like middle ground with that, where I still feel like I'm being loyal to my health objectives and the way I feel on a day-to-day, but also being loyal to the things I actually enjoy, right? So I think that that's important. And also just like some behavioral tricks are to use a smaller plate. Sometimes when we have like the massive plates, we tend to just assume that we need to fill the whole plate. So using a smaller plate just as a visual trick might be helpful. Imagining or considering bringing a healthy dish, and I love this idea, and this is what I typically contribute, is a big kale salad. And some people might kind of, roll their eyes to that, but honestly, it's the thing that gets eaten up the first. Like, it's just, do you notice that, Sandra? Because I know you do this too, is that everybody actually wants the veggie and dip tray and the salad, because most people think to bring like a really rich or tasty meal.
You are responsible for the energy that you bring into a room. And everyone brings in energy. I'm sure you can think of somebody who comes into a room and just raises the energy. Everyone gets excited. They can't wait to speak to them. They just add a pizzazz to the room. We've all felt that. And conversely, you've also felt somebody come into the room and the energy go plunk, right? And you got to ask yourself, well, what kind of energy are you bringing into the room? Are you bringing an air of anxiety? Are you bringing an air of already being upset before you walk through the threshold? Are you bringing the baggage from last year? Oh, I know this is going to be rough, and I know they're going to say that to upset me. And that brings in energy. So a really great little energy hack that I like to do, and I want to offer to you to bring with you on the holidays, or even your next meeting in a boardroom, anytime that you come together with people, is if in your mind, just in your mind, you can look at each person in the room and truly appreciate something about them. Even offer them a blessing. Like one by one, looking at them, being grateful for an attribute, see the beauty in them, see what's wonderful about them, and then bless them, and then move on to the next person. And I challenge you to do this, and also notice what kind of energy you're bringing into the room, how they may react to you differently, how the energy in the room changes. And
I love this idea though of being grateful and looking at each individual person and thinking like what's positive about them. It's a really interesting way to look at a room, and I'm sure then that you can see that in someone's eyes as well when they're thinking they're interested in you, they're grateful for something about you. Then it would completely
I think it's a positive like skill set to adopt for everyday life, because think about all of the microaggressions you might have on a day-to-day. I know that even during COVID, this was sky high, people not moving to the side on the sidewalk. Do you guys remember that time? Not to bring up bad memories, or like, like in the grocery store when everybody was like trying to distance and then somebody would encroach on your distance. And so I think that there's importance in using that, in part because it helps you reframe the way that you see that person, right? So we need a buffer. If you have somebody in your life who during the holidays is going to bring up a topic or say something to you that's going to be triggering, it will likely be the time that you least want to use that skill of finding something you love about them and blessing them, but it will be the most important time to do it, because it'll allow you to view another aspect of that person and buffer against any sort of negativity that you might otherwise experience.
oftentimes the exact things that we need to do are things we don't want to do.
Really don't want to do.
And then if we can get over that hump and get through to the other side, we are often so grateful that we were able to do it. So here's a great question for you. Wayne Dyer, for those of you who know him, used to say, when you squeeze an orange, you get orange juice. When you squeeze an apple, you get apple juice. So whenever you squeeze something or someone, the truth comes out, right? So then the question becomes, what happens when someone squeezes you? When you get super stressed, when someone pushes all of your buttons, what comes out of you? And I used to hate when I would hear this because yesterday I went on a walk with Dr. Sasha. Hi, everybody knows her. And we were talking about when I'm on my own and my kids aren't bugging me and my partner is not upsetting me, I'm just so lovely. I'm the loveliest person you'll ever want to meet. But man, oh man, if you push my buttons, if you touch my wounds, if you're disrespectful to me, like as a child, nice stuff doesn't come out of me. And it's so much easier to say, yeah, but it's them. Yeah, but if you weren't rude to me, I wouldn't be rude back. Yeah, but if you didn't show that aggression, I wouldn't have had to be aggressive back. That's not necessarily true. When we really grow up and put on our big boy pants and our big girl pants, our adult pants, we have to come to terms with the fact that when I'm squeezed, if anger comes out of me, then there's anger in me, right? If I'm squeezed and aggression comes out of me, there's aggression in me. And that's something I need to look at. And that in fact, those people are the greatest gifts in your life because they are pointing to the areas that you need to work on, the areas that you need to find peace, because your behavior does not depend on other people's behaviors, right? So to have that freedom and that composure and that peace, regardless of what is happening outside of you, now that's peaceful. That is peaceful. Okay, so why do some relationships get strained? Anybody here heard of Crucial Conversations? It's a great book to read, and it talks about when important conversations don't happen, relationships can become strained. I'm not suggesting that Christmas is the time to have a crucial conversation. I'm not suggesting that at all. In fact, avoid them at Christmas. That's not fair to the rest of the family. But rather, I'm just sort of opening your eyes to the possibility that you may have a strained relationship because this conversation hasn't happened. Or maybe you had one in the past and it wasn't managed very well. So we don't speak up when it matters most for one of two reasons. We're actually afraid that we're going to jeopardize the relationship, or we're just afraid to talk about what's bugging us. And so we stay quiet, or we're afraid of that conflict. So what is a crucial conversation? That's when the stakes are super high. So it's a really important conversation that needs to happen. Opinions are different and emotions run really, really high. And I would add to it that a crucial conversation is someone that you really love too. Because there are times when I'm in situations where the stakes are high and the opinions vary, and maybe the emotions don't run high, or maybe this person, whether I have a long-term relationship with them or not is not important to me. So then it doesn't become a crucial conversation. Conversations turn crucial when people tend to fall into one of these two ineffective paths. So they either speak directly or abrasively to get the results they want, but harm the relationship. So they really just hammer home, like, this is the way it's going to be. It's my way, the highway, and you harm the relationship. Or the other one is you remain silent in the hope of preserving the relationship. And oftentimes we remain silent because we just don't have the language around it. I don't know about you, but I was really raised to be the good girl, the nice girl. And so I only had two speeds. I only had two avenues available to me, to be really, really nice, or to be really, really, if I can say it, bitchy. And I didn't know the whole world in between of super nice and super bitchy, that there's this place in the middle where I can kindly and intelligently talk about what is not working, what needs to be resolved, where I can honor that person and their opinion, even though I may not agree with it, and honor my point of view. And so if there is a crucial conversation that needs to happen in your family, I suggest, either you do it before Christmas, but again, if you're afraid that it may not go well, or if you don't have a lot of practice, to wait till after Christmas. And then just use that place of acceptance, like accepting that, we haven't had this conversation, but I'm still going to try to see the very best in you. I'm going to try to bring an air of peace into the holidays. I love that quote. Do I want to be right, or do I want peace? So the first step in a crucial conversation is, what is the story you're telling yourself? Oftentimes I'll coach people and they'll have to go into a crucial conversation and they'll say to me, let me write out the script, Sandra. I really want to get my words right. And I'm like, don't worry about that so much. Worry about the story in your head first. Because if the story in your head is they're an idiot, they're terrible, they're evil, what they've done is wrong, they've always hurt me, guess what? Even if you read the script, that energy is going to come out. It's going to come out in your tone. It's going to come out in the way you tilt your head. They're going to feel that energy. We're all energetic beings. We've all been there in a conversation with someone and you're like, they didn't say anything wrong, but I'm leaving feeling bad. When you get the story right in your head, and I get it, we've all been hurt by people, but if the story is this person has done the best that they can with what they've got, I can see some good in that person. Maybe there's a perspective I don't see right now. Maybe there's a story I haven't fully understood. If I get that story in my head, then my tone will be different. The words I choose will be different. The way I tilt my head will be different. And the energy that I bring to the conversation will be different.
Actually, I just heard that we have a special guest in the audience right now.
I know, we're going to have to make him chat.
Exciting. Welcome.
Hello, team.
Oh
I cannot believe that there's this 70 people online, and you're
know.
just all so to be part of this conversation and to really contribute to it. It just shows how much love and compassion and need there is for having these conversations. So
what I like
always
about
proud
this
to be here.
conversation is that it's not actually weight centric, Sean. It's about health, like being healthy during the holidays, but it's not necessarily putting the focus on how do we lose weight over the holidays. It's just how do we feel good during the holidays.
Yeah, and I think that so listening to Sandra's conversations from all the times I've been listening to her, a lot of the time she doesn't talk about weight. Like 90% of the time, I'm like, you're talking about love and compassion and the things that end up making a difference in our lives, and that impacts weight. It impacts the way you feel about yourself. And I was like, I thought I was coming to hear you talk about weight. You're like, no.
No.
And
I don't know if you feel this way. Dr. Wharton is an obesity doctor who actually trained me. When patients come to me now and talk to me about their goal weight, I even flinch. I'm like, I really don't like that word goal weight, but I know that we're part of the industry. We're adjacent to the industry that actually provokes that sort of thinking about weight. Is like, well, we've got to lose weight. We need a goal weight. If we don't have a goal weight, then what are we even doing here, right? So it's refreshing to actually just talk about mental health and well-being during the holidays, and to talk about quality of life.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. And I feel the same. So whenever somebody talks about a goal weight, I say, and they ask me, what is your goal, the goal weight, Dr. Wharton? What should my goal weight be? And I tell them, I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. I know that you should be loved. You should be cared for. You should try to be as healthy as you possibly can without blaming and beating yourself up. And those are goals. Weight is not going, a number is not going to be part of this.
Those are less tangible goals, right? Those are moving towards certain feelings about oneself, trying to inspire positive self-evaluation, but those are not necessarily things that sometimes my patients want to hear. And so I did a group recently and I started the group with, I want to invite you guys to start, instead of focusing on weight, focusing on unconditional loving acceptance for yourself. And I think I'm preaching to the choir here, because you guys all are part of Obesity Matters, and Sandra and Preeti do such a great job about, underscoring the importance of self-compassion. But I think that I've never seen so many eye rolls Like, how does one love themselves regardless of whatever weight that they're at, regardless of the stigma that they may have been subjected to, or by that one bully who maybe bullied them in 4th grade that they still remember as an adult, right? Like, how do we let go of that and see ourselves a little bit differently? Actually enjoy it for yourself, regardless of the materialism. I think it's really easy to get caught up in all the materialism and what you need to buy and what you should buy, and that in itself is its own stressor that steals the attention away from the meaning of the holidays. How do we get you to focus on what actually matters, whether it's you actually just hanging out on your own, or whether it's you focusing on quality time with the people that you truly love? And so for me, an example would be that for one of my cousins who I love, and I spend a lot of time thinking about what I want to give her. And I thought, what's better than the gift of time? Like, well, I rarely ever see this person. How about I actually go out of my way to drive the 40 minutes out to her and actually take her out for lunch instead of thinking about what I have to give her? And also, on the contrary, do you feel obliged to do things? Do you feel like you're the yes person, that for everything that you get invited to, that you've got to say yes? And so can we create boundaries and actually focus on the things that are a hell yes? Like, yes, I want to go on that, and only say yes if it's a hell yes, and say no to the things that aren't necessarily a hell yes, that you have to kind of convince yourself to go to. And really reflecting on what the holidays actually mean for you, and of course, viewing the holidays through a lens of gratitude. I know for a lot of people, they don't necessarily have the people around that they want to be with because they're either no longer here or they don't live in the same city. But what else can we reflect on to sort of buffer against some of the negative feelings that might come up during the holidays? And gratitude is one of the best ways to help with that. Trying to make everything perfect, the Christmas tree, I even look into the napkins that I can buy from HomeSense, everything else. But in all honesty, nobody really cares. I don't think that anybody really cares when they show up at my house for the holiday party that there's a coaster plate, right? So identify ways that you can be a little less perfectionistic. And the way I think of it is, if my emotions are being sort of, dragged in the direction that I don't want them to be, I have to start thinking about what I'm thinking, right? So if I'm feeling negative or stressed or waking up feeling a little bit clenched, what is it that I'm actually thinking about that's causing that emotion? Because remember, your emotions are a direct extension of how you think. And how do I replace that thinking with things that are actually within my control? Mastering the art of delegation is important. As always, I always do the potluck instead of trying to make everything myself, so that I can spend time with people I love, and then live and let live. If things aren't perfect, then so be it.
This time of year can be quite lonely, and we need to talk about loneliness. I think that oftentimes we have an idea in our head of how the holidays should look, and it's often influenced by Hollywood, but that's not necessarily true. And what if loneliness was a perspective? And what if I decided to have a different perspective? I share custody with my daughter, so I only get her 50% of the time. And there have been some Christmas mornings where I don't have her. So I can definitely go into this space of nobody loves me, I'm by myself. How did this happen? Why don't I have a traditional family? Why are we not sitting under the Christmas tree and drinking, hot chocolate and having the family that I grew up watching? Why is this happening to me? And that's one perspective. And that perspective is going to make me feel incredibly lonely. And I can really feed the fire, how do they say, you fan the flames of that and really make that into a roaring fire that's really going to change the way I feel about my entire day. And so what I've learned as a result of not always having my daughter for Christmas is that Christmas can happen on any day, right? It doesn't have to be the 25th. And people are so busy with split families. And what if I decided Christmas was December 20th, because that's when everyone is available and that's the day that I cherish and enjoy and love? What if the 25th is the day, if I'm alone, that I look for other people that may be alone, that's my day to be of service? And that's a real great shortcut when it comes to loneliness, is to seek out other people who may not be with their families, who could use a phone call, could use an idea to get together. What if I used that morning to be of service, of charity? So again, it's, Sandy used that word, dial up the intensity or dial down the intensity. And of course, everyone is entitled to their feelings. And if we backtrack and where do these feelings come from? They come from our thinking. And it's really hard to control that first thought that comes into your head. And it might be your eyes open and, I feel alone, and that's okay. But I get to decide what the second thought is, the third thought, the fourth thought. I get to dial up the intensity on thoughts that either serve me or don't serve me. I can dial down the intensity. I can look for other perspectives. Because listen, at the end of the day, we're all of us each only have this present moment and this present day.
Sandy and Dr. Wharton, what other nugget do you want to share with us as we are all approaching the holidays? I think even tomorrow is US Thanksgiving. So what's your last piece of guidance here?
You know what? Mine's a little bit unconventional. It only in the sense that I feel like we live in a society that makes it really easy to either be inactive. Our society fosters inactivity. And so I think that a lot of the time, my patients have a hard time grasping this idea that the effort required in activity is normal. It's normal because I think that it's portrayed as something that is actually really easy for most people to engage in. But for the most part, expending energy is not necessarily a normal thing for our brains to be hardwired to do. And so I try to get my own family included to be a little bit more active. So we used to do these like walks around the block occasionally after dinner, or like going out of our way to like get some form of activity in, because I think that it should be something that's normalized, that it does require some effort to go out of your way for activity and that we don't get enough of it, but we always feel good after, right? So the return on investment in the effort that you apply to getting active, whether it's going out for a little bit of a longer walk with your dog or going caroling, if that's your thing, like that's always stuff that you feel good about after, rather than just in the moment.
That's great. And what I would tell people is to not to beat yourself up about anything that ends up happening over the holiday season. If you had a little bit too much at one point, or you had that chocolate thingamabob or whatever it happens to be, that's okay. It's the holidays and that's okay. No blame, no shame, just love. It's so important. It's so important to remember that even if I see somebody after the holidays and like, I put on 2 pounds, I put on 5 pounds, I'm upset. I'm like, I'm proud of you. I'm not upset. I'm proud of you. They're like, why would you be proud of me? And I got somebody at a conference telling me, Dr. Wharton, a physician, to say to our patient, we're proud of them, when in fact they did the opposite to what we told them to do. I said, absolutely, I'm telling you to say that you're proud of them. What are you proud of them for? You're proud of them for showing up. You're proud of them for coming back to the table. You're proud of them for saying that I'm ready to take this journey again, and I'll take it with you and we'll work together. I'm super proud of them. The people who don't show up at all, who have blamed and shamed themselves to the point that they're not even going to present to the people who care about them and work in this field to make sure that they're the best person they could possibly be. That's what I really want for people to do, is don't blame and shame yourself. Really believe this isn't just a fuzzy thing. Really believe that you are loved and you are cared for. We love and care for you. And that's why we do a lot of this work.
The last thing I want to add is that, yes, a cognitive tool that Dr. Wharton brings up is really, really helpful to learning and repeating. So we always feel good. If we always feel good for the behavior that we are trying to change, we're more likely to repeat it. Positive reinforcement really works, but it requires you to reflect on that and to find a reason to feel good about it. You're a lot more likely to repeat something if you feel good about it, but you're a lot more likely to avoid something if you feel bad about it, right? So use reflection as a tool after you leave the party, whether you've gotten up and been active, whether you had that meal that you thought was really bad. Find a way to positively reinforce, whether it's even being mindful of the fact that it wasn't necessarily ideal, and you'll change it next time.